see, what questions do I have here? So first, where did you grow up? Tell me about your childhood, geography, and neighborhood. Greg, you're first.
Me, actually, my father was in the military, so we moved around a little bit. So I lived in different places, North Carolina, St. Louis, Virginia, and then I spent a lot of time in Memphis, Tennessee. So as a kid, I kind of got around a little bit. Certainly, I think it's helped as I looked at all those different areas to incorporate into what I'm doing now.
Yeah, true. That makes sense. Did you have a favorite place?
Me, I like Virginia. I like the beach. I think I like that the most. Being able to go down to the beach. Right now, I live in Atlanta, Georgia. You got to drive about 4 hours to get to the beach, so I think I missed that.
Yeah. Fair enough. Hello, everybody. Welcome. I'm Michael Weiss with AI4. Just hang tight as we let other people join, and we'll continue to get to know our panelists. So, Kermit, where did you grow up?
I grew up in Chicago, in the neighborhood of Hyde Park, which is around the University of Chicago. Still, in some ways, think of that as home, though I haven't lived there as an adult at the end of the day.
Yeah, I love Chicago. Not too far from the 1893 Chicago World's Fair site where you were.
Yeah, exactly. And the Museum of Science and Industry, which is in a reconstructed building from that site, was basically my playground. I grew up 2 blocks away from it. So
that's awesome. That is so cool. Yeah, I mean, most people saw electricity for the first time right in that location.
Yep, exactly.
Arnold, where did you grow up?
So I was born and raised in Toronto, but I lived in New York for a little while. So that was a good fun time, just before 9/11. And
nice.
Yeah, now I'm living here, but working in Montreal. So the other AI hub in Canada, at least.
Nice. Yeah, I know Canada, Toronto, and Montreal are both crushing it. Dave, how about you? Where'd you grow up?
So I grew up in the Bay Area, actually, and lived there until I moved to college, went out to New York for college. Following that, I spent some time in Las Vegas. I moved to Vegas to become a professional poker player, and I wasn't very good at it. So I had to quit that job and find myself doing something new. And so I'm back in New York now.
Wow, that's epic that you took the professional poker player dive. Kudos.
Yeah.
How about you, Sri? Where'd you grow up?
Born and raised in India, Hyderabad, which is a place of where a lot of cultures come together. It's a melting pot of very different sections of the nation as well as the world. And so I then went to college in rural India, which is where I learned about the villages and how people, real people, come together, and learned a lot about how to see myself in the universe. Steadily going west has been the thesis since then. I've been spent some time in Tennessee, so I saw one of the panelists is from there, and then Memphis, and then from there to California. So the last 20 years plus here in Silicon Valley, working myself through several startups of different caliber, and so quite excited to be on the panel.
Nice. That's an awesome story. I'm glad you found spirituality young. All right. So hello, everybody. Welcome. I'm Michael Weiss with AI4. I'm going to give people 1 more minute to continue joining. And then I'm going to ask our panelists one more question, which is a personal favorite of mine. What is your favorite ice cream flavor? Greg.
Strawberry. Yeah, I like strawberry.
Solid. Chunks or no chunks?
Chunks. I like the chunks better. The strawberry chunks, yeah.
I'm with you. How about you, Kermit?
Things with alcohol flavor in them. So anything with like Bailey's or rum flavor, rum raisin, all those kind of things I tend to like.
Oh man, that's awesome. I just saw a commercial actually. Haagen-Dazs is coming out with like a whole new line of like liquor ice creams.
And I have 3 in my fridge.
Epic. How about you, Arnold? What's your favorite ice cream flavor?
My favorite is my wife's favorite, I guess. So that's how it works. Pralines and cream. She loves it. So that's what we have in the house.
Pralines and cream. Sounds good. I don't think I've had that. How about you, Dave?
Have to go with Ben and Jerry's. Probably Americone Dream. Ben & Jerry's is a Unilever brand, so I have to go with them, I guess.
Represent. Yeah, you can't go P&G. I'm with you. How about you, Sri? What's your favorite ice cream flavor?
There's an ice cream maker in Mission District, San Francisco, where I spent a bunch of time. Humphrey Slocum, and Humphrey Slocum makes some incredible flavors, like really mixes them out. Salted caramel is one of his good ones, but he does secret breakfast for those who are interested in the bourbon edition of it. But ice creams have taken on some amazing flavors, and we become like cocktails now. So
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, going local. Good move. All righty, everybody. We have a few hundred of our closest friends here with us, so let us begin. So again, my name is Michael Weiss with AI4. I head our content over here, and I'm one of the co-founders of AI4. As many of you probably know, the main thing we do is a big event for the AI industry. But then in the time of COVID, we've been trying to help people keep up to date on AI through digital stuff, and that's what you're doing here. And so without any further ado, let us kick it over to our amazing group of panelists who are going to help everybody understand how AI is impacting supply chain operations everywhere. And so Kermit is our moderator. I'm going to kick it over to you, Kermit, to take people through their self-introductions. Then we'll get into it. And if anybody has a question during the panel, just click the Q&A thing, the Q&A button, not the chat button. And we'll do our best to get to the questions either during or after, around like maybe 1:50 p.m. All right, Kermit, take it away. Have fun, everybody. I'll be here if anything's needed.
Great. Welcome, everybody. For those of you who joined earlier before we officially kicked it off, you've had the opportunity to hear where some of our panelists grew up, what their favorite ice cream flavor is. But now I'm going to give everybody the chance to make introductions on kind of where they are currently with work and what kind of experience they have in AI. So Dave, why don't you start it off?
Sure. I'm Dave Marmor. I'm a data scientist for Unilever. I worked specifically within just supply chain, supporting North America. And my experience with AI is, around what us data scientists do, various forms of machine learning, data engineering, and the works.
Great. Arnold?
Yeah, Arnold Liwanag, CTO of IVADO Labs, even though it says Scale AI, that's a kind of past life there. But IVADO Labs, we're a custom consulting shop that does custom AI solutions for focused on supply chain. And my history with AI is 20 years ago, I happened to drop into studying neural networks under one of Jeff Hinton's early students. And then it kind of just disappeared for a while, and all of a sudden it flared right back up. So here I am.
Sri?
I'm here, excited to be here. H2O.ai is a movement democratizing AI. Large number of our community uses our open source platform. About 20,000 companies use H2O. We're quite one of the earliest .ai domains, and since that time we've been doing lots of meetups and grassroots community building. Very excited to be part of an amazingly talented team. The team is kind of have a maker culture, so a lot of physicists, mathematicians, compiler engineers, but data scientists and Kaggle grandmasters. So several of these power data scientists have been working very closely with our customers, and so many of some of them are on panel. But we're excited to be here to talk about what we're seeing on the supply chain disruption that COVID-19 has presented to the world. It's an opportunity to reinvent our models.
Great. Greg?
So my name is Greg Brown. I've been with UPS for about 25 years, and the group that I'm in currently, we're looking at the end-to-end network for UPS to see how can we, improve the overall system. Certainly, we have a very tight operation that we run today. How can we make it better? So my team leverages machine learning and machine vision for convolutional neural nets for classification of packages, to leverage that on robotics and other like solutions so that we can improve our internal processes, which are more complicated when you get into some of these unstructured environments in our hubs facilities.
Great. And my name is Kermit Threatte. I'm a director at Wayfair with the operations research team. We are a team of OR scientists and data scientists that kind of work within Wayfair's operations. We have other areas for marketing, pricing, and those sorts of activities. But my group is primarily focused on operations, of which supply chain is a big part. Just in terms of background, I got into this kind of field early on. My undergraduate degree was in systems engineering, which was mostly operations research. Ended up going to graduate school, worked in a consulting for 18 years doing all of this stuff. So now it's exciting to be able to kind of apply operations research and data science in the supply chain. Great, so now that we kind of know all of our panelists, why don't we kind of go into some current and interesting questions. So for this first question, Arnold, why don't you give it a shot, and then the rest of us can kind of chime in on our opinions.
Yeah, sure. So I mean, obviously this is affecting the world. Everybody's directly affected by the COVID-19 crisis. In terms of our client base, you know, we've been lucky in the sense that it's really driven a lot of work towards us and kind of opened a lot of our clients' eyes and you know, our peers in terms of the importance of not only AI and applying that to supply chain, but also just digitization in general, right? So number one, this is definitely accelerating the digitization journey of a lot of companies. And then by that same token, then they're just layering in AI right at the same moment. So this has been really a good situation to really kind of drive that agenda quickly and accelerate that. So that's what we've been seeing, you know, and it is how COVID is affecting this chain, mostly from a disruption perspective. And that's what they're trying to deal with. And that's the types of questions that are coming up right now. There's so much disruption in the supply chain. There already was a level of uncertainty in it. And now that uncertainty has kind of gone up significantly. So now everybody's trying to use AI to not only predict and react faster to these changes, but also better kind of adjust faster to how they can reconfigure their supply chain. And in this situation, AI sometimes is the only way to calculate that really quickly. Right?
Got it.
Yeah.
Now,
So,
anybody else want to contribute?
I'll take a stab at this one as well. When you look at the COVID situation that's out there today, certainly it has changed the world. I mean, a few months ago, people did not worry about being within the vicinity of someone else. Touch was not an issue. And to me, I was on a panel last week, and you know, I highlighted this point. You know, I saw a commercial on Papa John, and they were advertising that, you know, when the pizza comes out of the oven, there are no touches. And that just highlights the world they're in. People care about touches of their things that are coming to their homes. To me, that really makes everyone think about a supply chain that is, one, driven by reduced touches. So I think AI is a big player in enabling an AI supply chain that takes out the human element or the human pieces that are in the supply chain today. And UPS inadvertently has been working on a number of solutions that were already targeting the supply chain. If you may have seen in the news, the Too Simple, the autonomous feeder, for the long haul delivery, Waymo, autonomous vans, Flight Forward, we're doing drone delivery with autonomous with drones that are doing delivery, and smart warehousing and so on. So when you start looking at the holistic portfolio that UPS is building, certainly could enable a world where we start to adapt to these pandemic situations where you need to go to a reduced touch type of supply chain.
I mean, one of the things,
Sorry, Sri, go on.
some of the things we are seeing are even more disruptive in the sense that distributions, I mean, global supply chain has faced its first shock as experienced by the PPE or lack of cleaning supplies, so toilet paper. Many of us have personally experienced some of that. China used to be our warehouse for the world, or manufacturing source for our world. And I think disruption came from the source. So a lot of our customers are beginning to rethink where to put factories, to rethink where to put distribution centers. For example, we saw in Malaysia and Brazil the rise of COVID cases was a proportional, almost direct correlation to sales of Harpic or sales of cleaning supplies and so on and so forth. So public data on this, and of course, pantries have never been this busy. People filled up their pantries, which means that some of that stuff will not be bought again or sold again for a little while. And in addition to that, I think the pressure that the world is being seen on the cities, densely populated areas. We've seen an exodus. Mobility data indicates an exodus from cities at this point, both globally. And some of that mobility data is showing how folks from New York have now come interior, or not just to Florida, but along the highways. So new sources of demand are emerging. And so the kind of the same population, used to be demanding population from the cities, is now expecting things from the local Walmart and the local Target in a rural area. So that's changing how FCMG companies are beginning to see how to distribute, how to be more accessible for even the premium products in places they'd never expected before. Jobs, and I think that's the biggest story of today. A lot of job loss, and that means that people are going to see very different modes of consumption and how to stretch out. Staples are on the rise, but mostly e-commerce and electronic, online electronics. So some of us have bought home printers and upgraded home equipment. A lot of that change has brought a substantial transformation of supply chain is ahead. And I think this is not going to be a short-term effect. I think we expect digital work to be on the rise, which means less transportation, less of public places. So a lot. This is I call BC is before COVID, and everything after that is now going to have to adapt on how to be socially distant but spiritually and connected by work.
Yeah, from my perspective, I mean, there's kind of an immediate direct application, and it's probably more reactionary than anything else. It's, you have all these supply chain systems that have forecasts, whether they're sophisticated or not, or driven by AI. And there's nothing historically that can match what's going on right now. So adjustments have to be made, and how those adjustments have to be made. And they probably have to be done rapidly. So how do we as an industry kind of react to that and think about it? And then there's and by the way, that's not just for now while the pandemic is going on, but even a year from now or beyond that, you're still going to have this disruption in the data set. So you're going to have to correct for it or do those sorts of things. So that's kind of an immediate, how do we handle that? And then in terms of structure or new technologies and that sort of thing, that's kind of a question for me, just because there is an immediate response that's necessary. There are all sorts of issues out there with this emergency situation. So companies are triaging where they put their time and effort. People are trying to stay afloat or try to either deal with less volume or more volume or whatever's going on. So my question is, some people are going to be forced to focus on technology using AI sooner rather than later. And other people might not be able to or might have to delay it given what's kind of going on.
Excellent.
Great. So shall we go to the next question?
The one comment I was going to add on the previous one is that
Sure.
a lot of there's transfer learning to be had from the 1918 size of COVID, where we had initial bump, a second big bump, and a third bump, versus the H2N2, which was more of a single episode. So how can we learn kind of at top level different scenarios? And then a lot of the data, as you said, before COVID is no longer relevant. So companies that can learn quickly as the charts are changing, putting that infrastructure together is kind of becomes paramount. And the third one is, most of the models we're looking at now are simple math. So it's not actually the complex math that is coming to help. Very simple Poisson distribution, obviously, we all saw that in the COVID-19 cases, but just simple, better understanding of the space, but very simple application math is what we're seeing being widely used, that can be interpretable, and people can learn from that and apply again and again. So, yeah.
Great. Next question is about robots. I figure, Greg, it would be good if you could start off on this one.
So I would say, when you look at robots, I think especially at a time where, again, to a touch is a critical component of our day-to-day life, I think robots are going to be important. The thing that's changed about robots, I think, over the years, from where they started out of the automotive industry, is really the change in AI. So machine vision, ways that you can now leverage a convolutional neural net to classify or basically enable a robot to see like a human does. It enables then these decisions that a robot can make that they really couldn't make before. In the automotive industry, you basically had this assembly line, and you had these parts in this very structured environment, and that part comes down the line, and you can control it, and then you can make the decision. When you think about what we're doing at UPS, or really anywhere in the world where people are applying robots, inside the building, inside our facilities, or even outside in autonomous vehicles, and whatever the case may be, you really need that machine vision and other techniques, like maybe reinforcement learning, in order to apply these techniques to the robot so that it can adapt very quickly in environments that are changing, that you cannot control. And I think that's the thing that's changing, or has changed really, to enable us to explore a wider usage of robots. When you think about robots, it's really drones, autonomous vehicles, as mentioned, autonomous mobile robots inside the building, arms that are bolted to the ground. There's a wide variety of robots that can be applied. The other factor is that the computational power and the cost of leveraging artificial intelligence at the edge has come down to a certain degree, and has opened the door for people to explore this technology in a way that we haven't before. At UPS, we typically look at our environments, and because there are network level impacts to whatever we do, the systems have to be reliable. So for UPS to start looking at it, it has to be something that is reliable, robust, and then we can count on it. And I think robots are getting to that point now where we can count on them, leverage them, and deploy them in our operations, even though those operations are, again, unstructured as they may be.
Great. Would anybody else like to elaborate or add to it, the question?
Well, we've been working with a company here in Canada that's, and I'm sure there's a few others out there, but in terms of applying robotics to the warehouse, and particularly the transformation that we're seeing and what AI is enabling is vertical warehouses. So that's been a pretty interesting one. So Greg, I'm sure you've kind of fooled around with some of those things, but Nordstrom is one client that's picking up on that. There's a couple other clients up here in the retail space that's picking up on that, especially with the idea of micro fulfillment centers. So just having that level of granularity and the ability to kind of go down to lots of one is kind of interesting. And really at the end of the day, AI, to be able to calculate at that scale is probably one of the only ways to achieve going down to lots of one, especially in really highly distributed warehouse environments or micro-fulfillment kind of situations.
I would say, I would like to add that delivery, and we all are incredibly fortunate for the delivery systems that UPS runs in the time of this crisis. Congratulations, thanks, Greg. But I think hyper-local delivery is going to be the day of its time has come, and hyper-local touchless, someone mentioned earlier. So robots have a great role to play there. They're not here yet, in fact, and I think localized distribution centers, almost. I mean, it's kind of almost the return of the back to the future in some sense, where we used to have the local stores, but now these stores will be cashierless and potentially very AI will play a substantial role. Some of us have experienced cashierless stores in China and Seattle. I think the times for them has now it's almost come there. So I think robots have a huge role to play in kind of categorization, organization, and one of our customers is a grocery chain. They're able to automatically pick the weekly pack that's needed for most of their customers. So that personalization and then packing and making sure there was no, it was touchless, or when it was touched, there was no chance of contamination. I think all of those are going to be demanded as necessary services. Within 30-minute delivery is the other piece that some of us have experienced in Ali and in other parts of the world, and I think those things could also come out, and robots could play a strong role there in the US.
And maybe I'll add some more if I can on, it's interesting about the micro hub. That's certainly something you hear a lot about now. And the reason for that, before COVID, pre-COVID, was that there was such an e-commerce boom where people were ordering more offline. And, guess what? It got worse or better, depending on what side you're on. We have more volume flowing to the home. So those micro hubs that allow you to move volume closer to your home actually opens up, from a network level perspective, more opportunities to do things I kind of mentioned: drone delivery, autonomous vehicles. So now you have this different way to address your customer needs. And I think someone had mentioned that people want their items within 30 minutes in some cases. Like, how do you do that under the networks that we've applied in the past? Well, now that demand is driving the usage of robots in a way that we've not seen before, at least the demand side of it. So I think it's a good time to be working on robots, to be honest.
Great. So why don't we move on to the next question? And Dave, maybe you can take this one. What are some of the biggest bottlenecks in our supply chains, and how is AI helping?
Yeah, I think what we're finding out is that a lot of the work that's done in supply chain is actually done quite manual, as opposed to autonomous, kind of when, the futuristic kind of state that we envision everything's at. And we're really not quite there yet. We have a lot of legacy systems. And I think this is true for mostly every company. There's a lot of getting on the phone and calling up carriers when you need to. A lot of this has not been fully automated. And I think when you suddenly have a situation where it was so clear how many orders we need to get in such a limited period of time, that a lot of the manual work on this cannot be done that fast. And so we're starting to see areas that normally would not ask for additional help in, automating certain tasks, because it's not that they think a computer can't do what they do. It's that it's just never been quite an issue. Is suddenly changed, where there's just too much volume for them to be able to handle. And so our team, at least, we've been getting a lot of just requests for automate this, automate that, whether it's on the ordering, whether it's on inventory management. I think, Kermit, I think you mentioned something earlier too about just in general, all our forecast models. You know, I don't think I'm giving away any secrets here when I say our forecast models are using historical data. Well, we're going to have a very tough time now looking at the past month of data to suddenly figure out what our customers are going to be ordering in the future. So I think basically the big transition has been tasks that we're manual, and it never was really a particularly big deal to automate something. Now automation is absolutely of the utmost importance.
Yeah, and don't worry, you didn't give away any state secrets.
I think the other.
Anybody else want to elaborate?
I would say the other choke points are around food, right? To the food and food safety. We've been working with a perishable distribution company, like it does blueberries across the nation, and making sure they're fresh and available locally without getting damaged. All of that takes new set of algorithms. So the supply chain of perishables and the supply chain of staples and non-perishables, they're now beginning to be bifurcated. How do we now make food local as well, so that you have spend less time on the road? How do you start making sure that things are safe while also accessible? These are the kind of discussions that need a little bit more modeling than in the past.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I mean,
and from my perspective, sorry.
Oh, sorry, I was just going to say, well, we've seen some of our clients, and the demand side has dropped to 0, or 5% of what it was, and then on the opposite side, demand is 200, 300%. So that's what COVID has done or exposed.
I would give the spare parts. Somebody orders 1,000 of one particular spare part, it might clean your supply chain out, and then you have to restock. So how do you put limit? And usually people don't need 1,000 all at once. Yeah, the only kind of there's one big bottleneck, which in this environment is probably worse, because it kind of hits the essential worker. But this, even before coronavirus, just throughout the supply chain industry, getting labor has always been, or recently has been, challenging. Everybody who is nationally distributing product has their warehouses in the same places. I mean, they're only so, when you start doing the US, there's a place where you put your first warehouse, there's always the same place you put your second, and so on and so forth. So if you go to any of these warehouse centers, you'll see an Amazon warehouse, you'll see a Wayfair, you'll see a whole bunch of warehouses clustered in, all trying to get the same labor pool. So I find that that's a decent bottleneck that most major supply chains are facing, at least in North America. And anything that can be done to try to make people more efficient at doing their job so that the labor demands go down, which I think AI has a lot of ability to do, is helpful in this area.
I think hospitals and staffing, predicting supply chain for hospitals, especially PPE, and Arnold mentioned earlier, same. We're seeing a lot of, obviously, having working closely with our partners in healthcare. Obviously, that's the first and foremost supply chain that got spiky demand and choke points as well, and bottlenecks there. So at this time, it feels natural to be in support of it's kind of a privilege to be in support of the front line, and whatever we can do to help them on the supply chain analytics and stuff has not, I mean, predicting number of ventilators needed to number of beds and hospitals needed. Those have all been relatively similar type of problems that we've been looking at with our partners in healthcare. But I think in general, the overall system has gotten the high demand and no demand aspect of it. So.
No, exactly. So this is the question that I think anybody who is in this area has thought about and worries about talent. I think it's a challenge for everybody. But when we talk about talent for AI, what has been everybody's approach? And how do you think about retaining everybody?
I guess I'll dive in first. In terms of AI talent, what UPS tries to do is launch internship programs to attract talent to work with us, so they can get a sense of what it means to work with a very large company like UPS. And I think through that, it gives the candidate, whether they be PhD level graduates or not, an opportunity to know what types of problems that UPS has. And I think for me, if there is a place where you want to solve some of the most complex problems and also have the variety of problems to solve, UPS is the place. We look at network level optimization, leveraging AI where it makes sense, robotics, as I described many times, and conversational AI, if you want to apply that approach. We have a lot of just complex job setups that we want to address throughout our network. So any problem that someone is really interested in working on, we probably have it at UPS. Now, in the advanced technology group that I'm a part of, we cover a wide variety of all those problems out of one group. And I think for me, that's the thing that attracts talent, to our team. And then for my team specifically, what I try to do is, in terms of leveraging that talent, we use a co-mingled approach where you have subject matter experts that are very experienced in these various job setups, robotics engineers, plus mechanical, electrical engineers, all commingled to solve the problem together. To me, that's, there's other approaches that have been used, and that we typically could use at UPS, whether it be AI talent together working in one group or AI talent commingled. To me and my team, I build around this commingled viewpoint because I think it allows us to quickly get the answers and leverage the SMEs to level set on the domain of knowledge that's required to solve the problem, and then get solutions into our environments for UPS.
I'd agree a lot with you, Greg, on that approach. That when you talk about building an AI team that can solve AI problems, it's not just about hiring a bunch of data scientists and then to say here's the problem, go with it. It's a lot more about you need all the other pieces. You need the project managers, you need the SMEs, as you were saying before.
Yeah.
You need a lot of different people that all come together, and the data scientists, they really only take up maybe a small percentage of the real workforce that's going to put together this AI solution. And I think so. A lot of companies, they may not recognize the importance of all the other intricate parts. One thing I was going to talk about as well, though, is that when you talk about how to solve an AI problem at a company level, the way that at least we do things, and I think a lot of companies would probably do the same, is we're a massive global company. We have problems that have to be solved at the global level, and we have problems that have to be solved at the local level. And not every AI problem is solved the same way globally. And so, for instance, I work on just North America within supply chain. I have very specialized problems. I'm part of a local team. Individual teams come to us and they have to explain their problem, and we try to solve it for them. Whereas we have data scientists and other people that work at the global level, and they're looking at much bigger, range problems. How do we create autonomous driving, for instance, for the entire globe, for the entire network, not just one single shipping lane, for instance. So it's kind of just the way you approach it, depending on the size of your company, but to understand that not every single problem is the same, and not one, individual skill set is what you need on your team.
Data is a team sport, and I think Dave and Greg have said most of the great things needed on diversity, ability to attract people from different backgrounds. I think that's just great. H2O is home to 10% of world's Kaggle grandmasters, some amazing physicists and mathematicians. So I think what we've done is taken we're an AI software company. So we don't actually have data. So what are data scientists doing at H2O, right? So they are hungry to help our customers, which is great. So by creating a platform that's a way to reuse all their recipes, the notebooks that we're building publicly or in different companies that are locked in at H2O, they come in, they're able to now go help customers succeed. And customer success at H2O is almost the core theme. So that's kind of actually, and that's kind of really, if someone was caught up in one problem before and would have to cross several silos in the corporate structure to go to a different place, they come here. And so the way we have to essentially then almost keep that culture very scientific and very transparent, and data scientists ask lots of questions. And one of the purpose of the company that we started with was how to make our makers, the engineers build products and make markets for them, and how to make the sales team think about product, but we wanted to make data scientists happy. But that's an impossible goal. Most data scientists are very skeptic, self-critical, as well as critical of the world. And so to make data science happy is a perpetual goal for all us managers. And that's something we continue to kind of give them more impossible tasks to do, and partner with more data sources like UPS and Unilever. It's the richest data sources in the world, and how to then take those data sets and create meaning from that. So open source is a big way we've built this talent from brick by brick, was building that community, built the talent, and that culture of continued, transparent, flat thinking where the best idea wins. That's hard to do in a larger company, but at the startup level, we managed to be able to build that. And so being able to ask questions sort of everybody in the company and ask a data scientific way of looking at it and iterating through that. That's a very, when some of my customers do it, it's very hard. But at H2O, we managed to keep that still very, very collegial and equal. But I think the other piece that really attracts talent, especially in the age of COVID, or I would say, is purpose. And so a large number of data scientists just worked on Kaggle contests or put up data sets, collected data sets, just like similar to Johns Hopkins data sets, but all of them worldwide, put them together in the GitHubs, make them open, and build dashboards to help customers understand how the world is changing on them and how they need to change the demand sensing around it. The whole program around purpose, we have free for wildlife use, free for academic use. And that way we catch the people, the data scientists early while they're at colleges, and then so slowly then they can come in here, use the platform or go to customers. So that's it's a holistic cultural view of how to keep and attract and retain, which is actually equally harder to retain this poor talent.
And then from my perspective as an AI service provider, we're in the business of helping or enabling our clients to build their teams. And so the way we've gone about it is basically integrating their kind of seed talent in their organizations into our teams. It's kind of like a pivotal model. So we'll have our core team, and then we'll drop in client team members on a selected basis where they can fit. And sort of that co-development exercise really kind of helps accelerate that learning curve for our clients. And then the ideal situation is then they take ownership of that solution we've developed and move forward with it. And then we can go on throughout the rest of the organization and continue tackling, those edge cases and keep on growing that AI portfolio throughout.
Yeah, and I think for us, it's kind of a combination of everything you guys said. I guess the main principle is, people who do what we do happen to have this natural curiosity, a desire to affect and change the world. And there's a balance. You want people to know or have some domain expertise in whatever they're working on, whether it be forecasting, transportation, or whatever the supply chain discipline is. But you also want to give them the flexibility to learn, grow, and explore and try out different things. So our focus has been try to have a relatively centralized team that has the flexibility where, you know, if you look long-term for your career or even short-term over the course of a couple of years, 18 months, you have the opportunity to do different things. But you have enough time to actually get experience and expertise in whatever you happen to be working on now. And the focus is less on technique, but more on outcome. What do you do to make something happen? And then you have the opportunity to kind of go on from there. And it's a balance, because I think the world is more efficient if people stay in their space, work with everybody in that space, and do that for a long period of time. However, for intellectual curiosity and the ability to share and grow, I think it's better to kind of have a wider or more generalized focus. So it's a balance that we try to play. Great. So next question is, you know, we're talking supply chain here. And, you know, notionally when somebody says AI, yeah, there are applications of supply chain, but, you know, things like pricing, recommendation engines, things that are more virtual, you know, it seems like a very easy or natural application for AI, but supply chain processes tend to be physical and a little bit dirtier or messier. So just wanted to go to the panel and kind of get some specific examples of how AI was used in a supply chain. And then how was that introduced and evaluated, given the fact that this is a messier environment in some ways?
So, I mean, what we've seen with some of our clients, I guess one use case that kind of touches the physical aspects of the supply chain is inventory allocation or optimization. So, you know, when say if a retailer has a large footprint, how best to distribute the items and the portfolio of items that they're selling within those different regions based on the forecasted demand and the demographics and weather of those particular sites. So for example, you know, Circle K is one of our larger clients. And so, you know, what should that composition be in terms of items in that convenience store? So that's kind of one thing we've seen. And even though it's not a virtual world where you can do a lot of A/B testing and stuff like that, what we try to do is look for use cases that have high volume, high transactions. And luckily, you know, those guys are selling quite a bit of candy bars. So, you know, we can test it in certain markets, certain segments without, you know, really disrupting the entire kind of retail footprint of Circle K. And so that's how we've been able to do it. So selective A/B testing in certain markets and things like that, which, you know, a lot of traditional retailers have been doing for a long time, but with AI and kind of with a more digital kind of platform to do that with, it enables that to just happen a lot faster these days. Right? So.
I guess I'll start as well on this one. When you think about, I guess inside our environments, so launching autonomous mobile robots, where you have to have path planning, localization systems, mapping, depends on what type of robot. Obviously, that's a big bucket when you think about what could fit in that space. So deploying those solutions, one thing they have to be able to do is meet human parity. So if a human was doing the job, then the robot, which is driven now by this AI, you know, capability that's been incorporated, it has to be able to do the same job that the human was doing, or do it even better, right? So we cannot allow suboptimal solutions to be deployed, because in reality, it is a network level impact. If you think about a customer shipping their package, wanting to get their package from point A to point B, any disruptions along the way, whether it be in the building, whether it be in the network, it could have an impact on customer satisfaction, and that's one thing that we want to protect against. So being able to meet the rate of what the current network is requiring, being able to do it reliably, and also be able to do it within a cost point where we have a positive ROI, and also the economic model is a positive output, then those are all the factors that go into the solutioning, regardless of what it is, big robots, small robots, and then any network related solutions that are AI driven, they have to follow that same criteria in terms of what we deploy. So whatever that gets incorporated into our solutions, they have to be useful, they have to be helpful, they have to meet ROI. They also have to kind of meet our security requirements, because if you're doing machine learning and you need more data means now you got to look at the security side of things, because you're leveraging data at a rate that you may have not been doing before, which means you're opening up connectivity within the network or on a plant floor in a way you haven't before, and that now you have these devices at the edge that are off-putting data that you're collecting, and then you're using it in your AI solution. So.
Makes sense. So we have a whole host of questions that people have put on for Q&A during the course of this discussion. I think maybe it makes sense for us to spend the last, say, a few minutes of the call addressing some of those. Let me kind of go through the list and see who wants to. So one of the early questions is, we hear that AI has been used to handle COVID-19 situation. Does anybody know of any kind of tangible examples where it's been used?
Contact tracing, like in Ali and WeChat, for example, Alipay and WeChat data was used to kind of get a score, predictive score, even in the earliest days when Wuhan was hit with the crisis. And I think since then we've been, when we talk about flattening the curve, a lot of these scenario planning comes with a probabilistic score of what each of those actions will do. So we're trying to get some correlative effects of closing schools to how much life was saved because of that, and when, in the early versus later, what to do with peaks, when is the peak prediction, if the peak has passed, when to restart the economy, and how much money is to pump into the economy, how to do a lot of small business loans, whom to give loan to is beginning to use AI now. And I think that's, it's part of the way we are doing work these days. Right? The algorithms are our partners in making these decisions.
I was going to say also, this is not something my team is working on specifically, so I can't speak to it too much, but I am aware of, situations where we're looking at safety right now. How do you keep the, workers in the plants? How do you keep them safe? And just kind of also just looking at all the various data that is coming in. We are taking daily data about, how the various employees are doing. We might take surveys. Are you in good health? Have you experienced anything, and just kind of taking that data. And the reality is, I think right now it's still a bit too early to understand how that data can be used for some sort of AI solution to keep the workers safe. But that is kind of one of the ideas that's been floated around is, what can we do to make sure everybody's safe at all times, and how can AI, be utilized in that regard, knowing that a lot of the workers still need to enter the plants every day in order to keep our supply chain moving.
Yeah. So following on what Dave's saying, we're also working with a large mall retailer, and obviously they're all shut down now, but they're already thinking about the reopening exercise, and they're like, how do we use AI to better distribute traffic in the mall to, not enforce, but encourage social distancing. So they're using various tools and kind of the apps that they have on the mobile devices to sort of drive that behavior so that it's more evenly spread in them all.
That's a good question in the open question there. How do you foresee AI models catering to seasonal demand next year, given that this year's history will be clouded with noise? So I know we could have avoided that difficult one, but we have enough data scientists on the panel, so maybe we'll punt it to someone on the call.
I mean, we're still talking about it. We don't really know, quite frankly. There's a lot of different forecasts out there, and we kind of develop ours. We have a lot of different methods. It's not our forecasts also are not always specific to just everybody. It's we have different models for different customers, for instance, and so it is going to be kind of on a case by case basis. I think how we treat this, but you're 100% right that anything that our models are spitting out right now, I don't know. You kind of have to look at it. Is it they're really going to order that many cases based on what they did last week? Is that is the trend still increasing? Maybe we have to bring in new attributes that we didn't even think about before, into our models, such as COVID cases or something across this particular region. Is that something that needs to be brought into the model now because maybe that changes what that supply chain looks like for that region? I don't know. We haven't really.
It's a great question. I mean, I know the audience is awesome, so that's why I had to pull it in. Augmenting other data sets is one of them, I would say. But clearly, there is no history for this, and machine learning is. I mean, a lot of unsupervised reinforcement has to go through this process, but it's a tough one. Simpler models. Or interpretable models where you can then get a domain expert to weigh in on this, an epidemiologist to weigh in on this. That's a reasonable tool to use, but anything that's difficult to explain will have difficulty to recalibrate, if you will. But this is a tough one.
Yeah, sure. That's a good point. Simpler models might be more effective here, just so you have some level of interpretability and you can go from there. Whereas, as times come, over time, our models have become more and more complex. That's just the way things have always worked, So now suddenly maybe we need to take a step back and look at this and, look at the results, but also look at all the different, ways we can interpret that.
Yeah, that's been our experience too. So with some of our clients, the solution is throw more people at it. So you have your models, and yes, you simplify them to a certain degree, and then the people got to do some interpretation. That's essentially what we've seen in this, in this unusual time.
There's one other question on from Tivanka. It said, have you seen the rise of machine vision? And I think we are beginning to see that actually in, I just saw a demo of one of our customers using in-store analytics, parking lot vision analytics to start seeing if AI plus visual technology, AI plus other techniques, traffic, especially when they are releasing new ways of. Once the lockdown goes away, we are expecting a lot more cars, a lot less public transit. If you see the trends from China and Asia, where things have slowly become normal, you're seeing a rise of more driving, more cars, and so you'd see a lot more applications of machine vision, so that you don't have to physically come in contact to do activities. So
we actually see some applications on our side with computer vision as well for warehousing, for put away of products, like what spaces are open and where can you direct people. So maybe having camera snapshots of all of our different racks and identifying what locations we can put items in. And also in potentially, there are other solutions too, but one question that I think a lot of people might have common in the supply chain is what fits in the truck. You can have data on what the dimensions of all your product are, but that doesn't necessarily reflect how they're packed, how they can be stacked. And even if you get your forecast 100% right on what's going to flow through your network, you might still not get right how that all kind of fits together and how much transportation capacity you need. So being able to get a data snapshot of what that looks like can be really helpful, so you can start building machine learning models to start doing those predictions and those sorts of estimations.
Probably one last question.
Yeah, we can do one more.
More a comment about from Sanjay Bakshi. It's an open question to the panel. How best can AI help mankind in the next pandemic? And I think that's probably the best thing we can do is to organize our supply chains now, learn from all these experiences to prevent the 2120 or whenever the next big pandemic comes, when our great-grandchildren hopefully will be much better prepared to fight that crisis with a lot less loss of life and disruption to life. So that's it. On that note, I want to thank Michael for having us here, and what an amazing rest of the panelists. Thank you for having us.
Yeah, thanks everyone so much for joining. Any final comments or notes or ideas you guys want to throw out there before we sign off?
I like the way Sri ended it. I think that was good.
I agree. I like the way Sri ended it too. All right, so thank you all of you for being here. It was really, really awesome. You could tell from the questions that people were digging it, and yeah, we'll share this recording with everybody probably within the next day. And until then, I wish you all a happy and safe life.
Thank you. Thanks, Arnold.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, everyone. And great job, Kermit, moderating. You crushed it.
Thanks.
Bye, guys.
Bye.
Thanks, Greg, for being here.
Oh, thanks. Sorry, I was looking at the chat. Yeah.
Oh, it's all good. Yeah, if you want to hang around and keep asking questions, if you're having fun, by all means.
Oh, good. I appreciate it. Thanks again for inviting me. It's fun.
Yeah, you guys nailed it. Yeah, thanks for being here. Hit me up whenever if we can ever help with anything.
Okay, sounds good. Thanks so much.
All right.